Francis, you've said that awareness chooses wisdom or awareness chooses ignorance. The choice is made by awareness. So when I observe this awareness, it's making a choice of wisdom through you. You are living in wisdom. And for the sake of our discussion, and because I know for myself I'm living in ignorance, because I still have this belief that awareness perhaps is not.
Nobody lives in wisdom or in ignorance, only awareness does. Okay, so already the way you ask your question is implicitly predicated about you and me being different, right? So already you're cooked if you ask the question along those lines. You put me above you, right, as the guru, the authority, and so on, and we are all the same universal awareness. And there is only one entity who is alive, who lives. It is this universal being who lives. Everything else is dead. That's why Krishna tells Arjuna, look at these warriors, you know. They are already dead. You know, if you see them as separate individuals, they are not alive. There is only one universal life that flows through all sentient beings. Okay, sorry for interrupting.
No, that's perfect. So let me rephrase my question. Doesn't it seem more likely that awareness is limited and separate than it is universal, because I'm able to observe that awareness is living as in wisdom and in ignorance and everywhere in between? So instead of making an implicit assumption that it is universal, can I say that it is perhaps more likely that it is not universal, because I can see awareness in all shapes and sizes?
If you see awareness in all shapes and sizes, what is it that sees awareness in all shapes and sizes? And does that which sees awareness in all shapes and sizes have a shape and a size? If you see, I see awareness in all shapes and sizes, that which you see are objects, phenomena, not awareness. That which sees all the shapes and sizes that you talk about is awareness. In ignorance, we know only objects. And as a result, we believe that only objects are real, because we don't know the knower. Then our attention is drawn to the knower. We are asked, as my teacher was asked by his teacher, you know the objects, but do you know the knower of the objects? When we know the knower of the object, it's nirvikalpa samadhi, because the knower of the objects is not an object. So in this moment when we know the knower of the objects, all objects have ceased to exist. So we know the knower of all objects in its autonomy, in its freedom, in its reality, in its singularity, you know. And then when the objects arise again, now that we know their reality, they don't seem as real as they used to, because they are dependent upon their reality, which is the knower.
So this knower seems to be wise and ignorant at the same time. Is that a fair statement? Because if it is just the one knower, it's believing in all kinds of things which are contradictory to each other at the same time.
What is a belief?
Thinking something is real.
Based upon what? In other words, there are two kinds of beliefs. I can say, I believe the earth is a sphere. I can say, I believe that there are little green men on Mars. These are two very different types of beliefs. Why? Because I have factual evidence that the earth is spherical. I have zero evidence about the little green men living on Mars. So we use the word belief in both cases, right? But the meaning is different, right? In one case, we don't have the choice. The earth is round, it's not flat. In the other case, who cares about the little green man? We have zero evidence. They could as well be yellow. You see what I mean? So, when you say I believe, which category of belief are you talking about?
At the moment, I have no evidence that awareness is universal, so my belief is based on
the evidence you have that it is not universal? What evidence you have that it is not universal?
I don't, and especially because the way you explain.
So then, why do you believe that it is not universal if you have zero evidence? Then your belief is like the belief about the little green man of Mars, on Mars. You see? If you believe something, you carry the burden of proof, at least to yourself. So don't put the burden of proof on me that awareness is universal. Because I return the favor to you immediately. And I tell you, you carry, if you are the one who makes the statement that you believe that awareness is not universal, show me why. Because actually I don't care, really. I don't have to prove it to myself one way or the other. That's the beauty of it. Because there is a third way. And the third way is to live my life in not knowing about it. You see? That's different. That's wisdom. Why corner myself into one of the possibilities if I have no evidence? Why not start living my life from the freedom of not knowing and being open, equally open to both possibilities? And this equally open is very important. Because most people, when I say that, they say, yes, okay, I agree. I have no evidence that awareness is limited, but it seems so unlikely that it is unlimited that I stick to my gun. Why? Why stick to something, to a belief for which you have absolutely zero evidence? You see? Out of a false sense of safety. Like people cling to the traditions of their caste or of their tribe, even if they have become completely obsolete, because it feels safe. People keep eating the greasy, high saturated fat content food that their mother was cooking for them, although they know it's clogging their arteries, right? They know. They are MDs or dietitians, and they still keep eating this. Why? It feels safe, because that's what mom was cooking for us, children. So it's the same thing here. It feels safe, but we have to ask. Feeling is one thing. Is it safe? That's a real question. What kind of safety is there?
It seems a little strange to me that the one awareness acts so differently as it manifests through our individual minds.
Ask yourself the question, why doesn't this feel strange to you that the one reality manifests in so many different forms? We find that completely normal, right? Look at the variety of forms all over. Why do you find that normal and abnormal? And besides, what kind of argument is it, the argument that says, it feels strange? Is that a rational argument? It feels strange?
It feels strange because we talk about awareness as being the constant, right? The constant background, the unchanging, the always is. But this always is in wisdom as well as in ignorance at the same time, it feels like. So it kind of challenges the unchangingness of the awareness itself. Awareness knowing in one case that it is unlimited, and in another case not knowing. It feels like it's got, the same thing has got different states with different values in it. And that seems a little difficult for the mind to grasp.
As I said the other day, when you dream, you are the creator of the dream. There are people you speak to in the dream, and then you realize these people, they were you. So in fact, you are playing and creating several characters, right? Only to realize it was always you and only you. But again, that it feels strange is not an argument, is not a logical argument or a rational argument. A rational argument would be, here is the evidence why awareness cannot be universal. So, I'm listening. Where is it? You see, because the rest is just feelings, it seems strange, it seems... it's a kind of a twilight zone. You see what I mean? If you take a physicist at CERN, you know, and if the physicist writes a paper saying it feels that there is a Higgs boson, you know, I don't think that his peers would take the paper seriously, right? In other words, all these arguments that seem to come to you, you need to clarify them and to validate or invalidate them. Because what you are presenting to me is something which is in a gray area in between. So for the reason why I'm asking you to come with a very clear statement, a very clear, here is the evidence, right? Is because that will force you to clarify the situation. You see? Otherwise, you know, look at the district attorney in a court of law telling the jury, gentlemen and ladies of the jury, it seems that the defendant killed his wife. I don't think that that is likely to lead to a conviction, right? No, it's very different. Here are the witnesses, here is the video, here is a murder weapon. That's evidence.
So without depending on any phenomenal evidence, awareness, the one awareness would know that it is unlimited without having to depend on anything. And you've given us the example that nothing that shows in the mirror is going to tell you anything about the mirror. So if awareness knows it is universal, why is the awareness that speaks these words doesn't know that it is universal? And why is the awareness that speaks those words know that it is universal?
Why would awareness be so self-centered that it would have to constantly know that it is universal, instead of being whatever it is? You are kind of putting demands on awareness that awareness couldn't care less about. It's like you Anish, right? Anish, it wouldn't be much fun to walk in your life constantly repeating, I am Anish, I am Anish, I am Anish. I mean, you know, what about enjoying a mango, sharing a joke with friends? You see what I mean? To be constantly thinking, I am universal, I am universal. Huh? Shivam, Shivam, Shivam. Hey, once is enough.
I eagerly wait for me to know that once.
What?
I eagerly wait for myself to know that once. Once would be enough, so I eagerly wait for that time.
But start by being convinced that you have no evidence otherwise. And because then, when you are convinced that there is no evidence otherwise, what is the rational position? How do you allocate the probabilities between two mutually exclusive possibilities? Tell me.
50-50.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in your own inner honesty, you have to ask yourself the question, am I really allocating the probability 50-50? And if not, why? Because if not, you have to extirpate, to eradicate this irrational tendency in you to put the foot on the scale, you see, so towards ignorance. You have to be completely open. But that's not sufficient. That's not sufficient for the following reason. So then you have to be open to both possibilities. And if we have a kind of a scientific attitude, we have to test both possibilities, right? And the question is, the answer could be, okay, 50% of the time we test possibility A, 50% of the time we test possibility B, right? But even that would be a waste of energy and a waste of time for the following reason, that because we have, up until that point, lived our life solely based upon possibility A, we have already on record a lot of experimental results in terms of happiness, right? Which is usually a catastrophe, right? So then why not start testing hypothesis B? Because remember that the outcome and the benchmark is happiness. And see how it works for us. Since we already have a lot of results, having thoroughly tested the limited awareness hypothesis, right? We have a lot of results already in the database. So then, why not rebalance, if you will, and try to live our life for a while based on the other possibility. In fact, we are not going to be able to do that. In fact, because of some residual inherent bias in favor of hypothesis A, we are going to test hypothesis B only perhaps 1% of the time, you see? In spite of our determination to do it 100% of the time. Because most of the time we are going to relapse into the assumption that hypothesis A is the correct one. But what is going to happen is that during this 1% of the time when we actually put hypothesis B on the test, we get a positive result in terms of harmony and happiness. And that gives us an incentive such that next time we are going to test it 2% of the time, etc., etc., etc.
And I see that, Francis, since you've mentioned this experiment, right? I've been, over the last few months, whenever I remember, I do test out the hypothesis B. So it seems like life loves me back whenever I do that. And I've been...
It seems like life...
Like life loves me back.
Yeah, exactly.
And things somehow work in my favor, even though I wouldn't have assumed they would. Somehow, behind the scenes, things adjust themselves.
Yes.
And I've been trying that more and more.
That's something I cannot do for you. That's something, really the teaching is like you are given a car. But then you need to drive it out of the garage, and to use it for business and pleasure. Because phenomenally, you know already that you are not going to be able to decide this question one way or the other. There is no phenomenally possible determination. So it's better not to, I mean, you have to convince yourself of this first, but once you are completely convinced, then you stop trying, you know. But this experimental path is open, and that's the beauty of it. In other words, you are not banging against a wall. There is a way to jump above the wall, you know. There is the wall looks like an infinite potential barrier, but you can do some quantum leaps above it.
Thank you, Francis.